Right now, somewhere in the produce section of a grocery store near you, there is a bag of carrots or a clamshell of strawberries sitting under bright lights, looking completely normal. Same price tag, same cheerful photo of a sunny farm on the label. And in a small but growing number of stores across this country, something behind that label has quietly gone wrong, and almost nobody walking the aisle has any idea. We went through the FDA's own recall database, court filings, government inspection reports, and the actual statements these companies have had to issue about their own stores. And what we found were 6 specific grocery chains where buying fresh vegetables right now comes with a real, documented reason to slow down and pay attention. Not rumors, not some guy on Reddit. Actual federal recalls, actual lawsuits, actual fines with actual dollar amounts attached to them. This isn't about telling you to panic and never shop again. It's about you walking in with your eyes open instead of just trusting that the label and the low price mean everything is fine. Because at some of these stores, it really isn't, and the companies themselves have had to admit it in writing. Here's the honest truth about how most of us actually shop. We glance at a bag of spinach for about 2 seconds, check that it looks green, and toss it in the cart without a second thought. Nobody's reading inspection reports in the produce aisle. That's exactly why the 6 stores on this list matter so much right now, and by the end of this video, you'll know precisely why. Before we get into it, do me a quick favor and hit that like button. It genuinely helps this kind of consumer information reach more people who are about to do their weekly shop without knowing any of this, and that's the whole point of putting this together. Okay, let's start at number 6. Number 6, Whole Foods. And I know what a lot of you are thinking already, because this is the one that surprises people the most. Whole Foods has spent decades building a reputation as the gold standard for produce in America. You pay a premium there specifically because you're told you're getting the best quality on the shelf. So when shoppers started telling Business Insider that the produce had taken a noticeable turn for the worse, it actually made news. Customers described buying apples that tasted like water, an orange that was yellowed and tough on the inside, and lemons that arrived already bruised. Multiple shoppers reported more frequent out of stocks since Amazon took over daily buying decisions, and one financial analyst from Barclays who visited a store for an unrelated report described it as being in what they called disarray, with boxes cluttering the aisles and major restocking still happening as late as 10 in the morning, well after the store had opened for the day. Whole Foods has publicly said nothing has changed about its quality standards. But here's the thing worth sitting with. You are paying significantly more per pound for produce there than you would at almost any competitor on this list, specifically because of a promise about quality. And shoppers, in growing numbers, are telling reporters that promise isn't holding the way it used to since the buying decisions moved to a bigger, more centralized, more efficiency-focused parent company. To be fair, plenty of Whole Foods locations are still excellent, and a lot depends entirely on which store and which day you walk into. The smart move here isn't to avoid it completely. It's to actually inspect what you're picking up before it goes in the cart. Ask a produce associate when the last delivery came in, and stop assuming the price tag alone is doing the quality control work for you. Because when you're already paying a premium specifically for quality assurance, having to double check it yourself anyway kind of defeats the entire point of shopping there in the first place. Number 5, Trader Joe's. This one is genuinely fresh, and I mean that almost literally, because as of this year, the company is still dealing with the fallout. Trader Joe's built its entire identity around being the fun, trustworthy, slightly quirky grocery store everybody's cousin swears by. And for the most part, that reputation is earned. But starting in February of this year, a supplier called Ajinomoto Foods recalled several million pounds of frozen fried rice products carried at Trader Joe's because of possible glass contamination. That recall did not stay small. By March, federal food safety investigators had traced the most likely source of the contamination back to a specific vegetable ingredient inside those meals: carrots. The recall kept expanding, first to ramen and dumpling products, then further, until it covered close to 37 million pounds of food spread across 16 different brands sold nationwide, including, worth noting, store brand products at Kroger as well, which tells you this wasn't a Trader Joe's specific failure so much as a shared supplier problem that happened to reach a lot of different shelves at once. And this wasn't an isolated bad week for the chain. In the months around it, Trader Joe's also had to pull organic acai bowls over concerns about plastic fragments, recall tens of thousands of bottles of sparkling water that could crack, and remove a cheese product linked to possible listeria contamination in parts of California and Nevada. No single one of these stories is the end of the world on its own, and Trader Joe's has been fast and transparent every single time, posting clear recall notices and offering full refunds without a receipt. That part deserves real credit. But when you add it up, what you're looking at is a pattern, not a one-off, and the source of the biggest one traces directly back to produce that was supposed to be perfectly ordinary. If you've got Trader Joe's frozen meals with vegetables in your freezer right now, it is genuinely worth 2 minutes of your time to check the lot codes and best by dates against the company's own recall page before you eat them. Number 4, Kroger. Now, a lot of people don't realize how much they actually shop at Kroger because the name on your local store might be Ralph's, or Fred Meyer, or King Soopers, or QFC, or a dozen other regional names. They're all the same corporation, running on the same supply chain, sourcing produce through the same distribution network across well over 2,000 stores spanning dozens of states. And that distribution network has had real trouble this past year. Texas health officials flagged cucumbers supplied to Kroger stores by a company called Supreme Service Solutions over possible salmonella contamination. Around the same window, Kroger also had to pull 2 of its own deli pasta salad varieties off shelves over a possible listeria risk tied to an ingredient supplier. Salmonella and listeria aren't small words. Salmonella sends an estimated tens of thousands of Americans to the hospital every single year, and listeria is specifically dangerous for pregnant women, older adults, and anyone with a weakened immune system. None of this means every cucumber in every Kroger family store is unsafe right now. It means the supply chain feeding one of the largest grocery operators in the country has had more than one documented breach in a short window. And because that network quietly stretches across so many regional store names, plenty of loyal shoppers have no idea they're even part of it. The practical move is simple. Whatever the sign above your local store actually says, if it's part of the Kroger family, it's worth bookmarking their food safety alerts page, because a recall at a Kroger-owned warehouse 2 states away can absolutely end up on your local shelf too. Number 3, Walmart. And look, I want to be fair here before anything else, because Walmart is the single largest grocery seller in the entire country. Often cited as moving somewhere around a quarter of all the grocery spending in America through its thousands of stores, and the overwhelming majority of that produce moves through their system completely safely. But scale cuts both ways. When something does go wrong, it goes wrong at a size nothing else on this list can match. In May of last year, Walmart had to voluntarily recall its own market-side fresh-cut cucumber slices after the whole cucumbers used to make them, supplied by a grower in Florida, were linked to confirmed salmonella illnesses. The FDA classified it as a Class 1 recall, which is their most serious category, reserved specifically for situations where a product could cause serious health consequences or death. And that wasn't the only produce scare connected to the chain. A few months before that, back in November of 2024, bagged organic carrots supplied by a grower called Grimway Farms were linked to a multi-state E. coli outbreak that the CDC eventually tied to nearly 50 confirmed illnesses across 19 states, 20 hospitalizations, and 1 death. The recalled carrots were sold under more than a dozen different private label names at stores nationwide, and Walmart's own market-side brand was right there on that list alongside store brands from several other major chains. Not a farm contamination story exactly, but not a one-store story either. A single supplier problem that quietly worked its way into refrigerators through whichever brand name happened to be printed on the bag that week. Here's why that detail matters more than it sounds. Walmart's entire pricing advantage comes from running one of the largest, most efficient supply chains on Earth, moving product through countless warehouses and hundreds of suppliers at a speed nothing else can compete with. That speed and scale is exactly why prices stay low. It is also exactly why, when something slips through somewhere in that enormous chain, it doesn't affect one shelf in one town. It can affect a dozen states at once before anyone outside the company even hears about it. The sensible habit here, and it costs you nothing, is to actually glance at the FDA's recall page or Walmart's own recall notices once in a while, especially after you've bought bagged or pre-cut produce, since those are almost always the items named when something does go wrong. Number 2. Dollar General. And this one is less about a single dramatic recall and more about something slower and, honestly, a little sadder. For years, Dollar General barely sold fresh produce at all. Critics, including researchers at UCLA and the University of Toronto, found something striking when they studied what happens when these stores move into a neighborhood. As dollar stores multiply in an area, nearby independent grocery stores start closing. Roughly one grocery store gone for every $3 stores that open within a couple of miles. And once that happens, low-income households in that neighborhood were measured cutting their fresh produce spending by as much as 30%. To their credit, Dollar General has responded to years of food desert criticism by aggressively rolling out produce sections, reportedly reaching more individual produce locations than any other mass retailer in the country by early last year. That is a genuinely good headline. Here's the part that gets left out of the headline, though. Company representatives have described the typical produce footprint in these stores as around 60 feet of shelf space, a fraction of what a real supermarket dedicates to fruits and vegetables. To manage that limited space without constant waste, Dollar General brought in an outside company called Shelf Engine, which uses artificial intelligence specifically to predict how much perishable stock individual stores should order, rolling it out to thousands of locations after an initial pilot. Bringing in outside AI just to guess how much lettuce a single store needs tells you plainly that overstocking and spoilage were a real enough problem that they needed a computer system to manage it store by store. Layer onto that a company that has been fined over $1 million in New York for selling expired products, settled with Ohio's Attorney General after state investigators found violations in every single one of 14 stores checked in one county, and paid $400,000 just last fall after Colorado regulators found registers charging customers more than the price on the shelf. In the majority of stores they inspected, none of that is specifically about a tainted vegetable. It's about a company that, by its own actions and its own settlements, has repeatedly struggled with basic inventory accuracy. When the system tracking what's on your shelf and what it should cost is shown to break down that often, it's worth assuming the system tracking how long that bag of salad has been sitting there might not be airtight either. The fix here is genuinely simple. Treat the produce date on anything from a Dollar General exactly the way you'd treat a date on something from a corner store you don't fully trust yet. Check it every time. And don't assume the chain's sheer size means someone is watching every single shelf as closely as you'd hope. And now, number one. The one that, once you hear the full timeline, genuinely earns the top spot on this list. Family Dollar. Back in January of 2022, the FDA opened an inspection of a Family Dollar distribution center in West Memphis, Arkansas, after receiving a consumer complaint. What investigators found inside, in their own words, was almost hard to read. Live rodents. Dead rodents in various states of decay. Rodent feces and urine spread throughout the building. Evidence of gnawing and nesting. Dead birds and bird droppings. The company's own internal records, which came out later, showed that between March and September of the previous year alone, staff had already found and removed more than 2,300 rodents from that single warehouse. And yet products kept shipping out the door anyway, right up until the month the FDA finally walked in. Once the facility was fumigated, crews recovered more than 1,200 dead rodents in the cleanup. The recall that followed covered 404 stores across 6 southern states: Alabama, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, and Tennessee. And it wasn't narrow. It covered drugs, medical devices, cosmetics, dietary supplements, and human and animal food products shipped from that warehouse, which under FDA's own definitions absolutely includes shelf-stable grocery items like canned and packaged vegetables sitting right there on the shelf next to the canned beans and the jarred sauce. Here's where it stops being a 2022 story and becomes a right now story. It took until February of 2024 for Family Dollar, owned by Dollar Tree, to actually plead guilty in federal court to a criminal charge connected to all of this, and the company agreed to pay just over $41.5 million. The Department of Justice was direct about what that number means. It is the single largest monetary penalty ever handed down in the history of American food safety prosecutions. Not close to the largest, period. Sit with that gap for a second, too. 2 full years between the FDA walking into that warehouse and the company actually standing in a courtroom admitting what happened. 2 years where Family Dollar kept operating, kept stocking shelves, and kept selling groceries to families who had no idea any of this was working its way through the legal system in the background. And if you're tempted to write this off as one bad warehouse that's long since been fixed, consider that this is the same parent company that, back in 2019, had already received a separate FDA warning letter after drugs in its supply chain were traced to a manufacturing facility where, again, rodent feces were found throughout. Two separate, documented infestation problems tied to the same corporate umbrella in less than 3 years. And a city investigation out of Chicago, looking specifically at Family Dollar, Dollar Tree, and Dollar General locations between 2017 and 2023, turned up more than 3,300 code violations between them, including infant formula found 6 months past its expiration date, sitting on real shelves that real parents were shopping from. None of this means a can of green beans on your local shelf right now is dangerous. The recalled stock from that specific warehouse was pulled years ago, but it tells you everything about the culture and the corner cutting that can happen behind the scenes at a chain built around razor-thin margins and minimal staffing, the exact same conditions that make those shelf prices so low in the first place. If you shop at Family Dollar regularly, especially for canned or packaged vegetables and other shelf-stable groceries, it costs nothing to actually check the cleanliness of the shelf itself, glance at the packaging for any damage, and not assume that just because something is sealed, it's automatically been handled the way you'd want it to be. So that's the list. But knowing which 6 stores have a documented problem is honestly only half the job. The other half is what you actually do with that information every single time you shop, anywhere, not just at these 6. So here are 4 habits worth building into your routine, starting with your very next grocery run. First, actually use the FDA's recall page. And I mean actually use it, not just nod along when you hear about it in a video like this one. It takes about 30 seconds to search FDA food recalls and skim the current list before you head out the door. And most of these companies also post their own recall notices directly on their websites. The FDA even lets you sign up for free email alerts so new recalls land straight in your inbox instead of you having to remember to go looking for them. If you do nothing else from this whole video, do this one thing. Second, treat bagged, pre-cut, and pre-washed produce with more suspicion than whole, untouched produce. Look back at almost every single recall we just walked through. Cucumber slices, frozen vegetable blends inside packaged meals, bagged salad mixes. Whole, untouched vegetables that you wash and cut yourself at home are mixed and processed by far fewer hands and far fewer machines before they reach you, which mathematically gives contamination far fewer chances to spread from one bad batch into 100 different bags. A whole cucumber and a tub of pre-sliced cucumber are not actually the same risk level, even though they sit 4 feet apart in the same cooler. Third, keep your receipts, or better yet, use whatever loyalty app or rewards card the store offers, because almost every major chain on this list logs your purchase history against that account automatically. If a recall notice comes out 2 weeks after you bought something, you don't have to rely on memory. You can pull up your own purchase history and check in under a minute, the exact same way insiders at warehouse clubs use their own membership records to track price drops and refunds. Fourth, and this one's simple, don't be too polite to actually use the refund desk. Every one of these companies will take back spoiled or unsafe produce, almost always without a fight. And most don't even require a receipt if you're a member of their app or rewards program. The single biggest reason quality slips at any store, slowly, year after year, is that customers quietly accept it and never say a word. The fastest way to keep a company honest about what's on its shelves is to make sure they hear about it every time something isn't right. Quick recap before we wrap up, because this is the kind of list you'll want to actually remember next time you're standing in an aisle deciding what goes in the cart. Number 6, Whole Foods, where shoppers are reporting a real drop in produce quality since Amazon took over buying, despite the premium price staying exactly where it was. Number 5, Trader Joe's, where a federal investigation traced a major glass contamination recall, one that grew to 37 million pounds of food, back to a vegetable ingredient, on top of several other recalls in the same short stretch of time. Number 4, Kroger, whose cucumbers and deli salads have both faced recent contamination scares, and whose name is hiding behind a dozen different regional store banners you might be shopping at without even realizing it. Number 3, Walmart, where sheer scale means a single supply chain slip, like the market-side cucumber recall or that warehouse forklift contamination, can ripple out across multiple states almost overnight. Number 2, Dollar General, where food desert economics, 60 feet of produce shelving, and a long, documented history of expired stock and pricing violations should make you check every date a little more carefully. And number 1, Family Dollar, where a rodent infestation so severe it produced the largest criminal fine in the history of American food safety law, should tell you everything you need to know about what was happening behind the scenes before that warehouse ever got caught. Now, here's the part I actually want to leave you with, because none of this is meant to scare you off grocery shopping altogether, and it would be a little dishonest to pretend otherwise. Every single store on this list still sells plenty of food, vegetables included, that is perfectly fine, and most shoppers at most of these chains, on most days, never run into a single one of these problems. This isn't a boycott list. It's a heads up, the same kind of heads up you'd want from a friend who happened to actually read the fine print and the FDA filings so you didn't have to. The companies on this list aren't uniquely evil, and a few of them, especially Trader Joe's and even Dollar General to its credit, have moved fast and been genuinely transparent the moment something went wrong. What separates a store worth your trust from one that's quietly cutting corners usually isn't whether a problem ever happens. Problems happen everywhere. Food touches a warehouse and a delivery truck and a human hand. What matters is how fast they admit it, how completely they fix it, and whether you, the shopper, ever actually find out before it's too late. That's really the whole filter worth applying to any grocery store, not just the 6 on this list. It's not about finding a perfect chain, because one doesn't exist. It's about knowing which ones own their mistakes quickly, and which ones needed a federal court case to finally admit there was ever a problem at all. So that's the job from here. Shop smart, not scared. Check the dates. Glance at the recall page every now and then. Don't be too polite to ask for a refund when something's actually wrong. And if you found even one thing in this video you didn't already know, do me a favor and hit that like button and consider subscribing, because the FDA quietly issues new produce and food recalls almost every single week, and the only reason most shoppers never hear about the ones that matter is that nobody's putting it in front of them in plain English before they go shopping. That's genuinely the only thing this channel is trying to do. Drop a comment and tell me which one of these 6 surprised you the most, or if you've personally run into a bad batch at any store on this list. I want to hear about it, because the comments on these videos are honestly where half of the best tips come from. And if there's a specific store, a specific product, or a specific grocery chain you want me to dig into next, tell me down there too, because you all consistently pick the best ones. Stay sharp, check your labels, look twice before it goes in the cart, and I'll see you in the next one.